even excited to know how they became futurists. Like, what is that even?
Yeah, so let's talk about what a futurist is. Got it. Let's see here. I'm going to hit record again too. Okay, yeah, there we go. There I am. Hey, everybody. Let's talk about what a futurist is. Yeah, because look, I hadn't heard of a futurist until a couple of years ago, maybe, where, it's these people who actually tells you what's going to happen in the future. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years down the road. But it's not Miss Cleo. It's actually somebody who looks at how technology is trending, how social issues are trending, how the wealth transfer, for example, the $68 trillion of wealth transfer is trending, and tells us where they expect the world to be. And we have our first guest here. We have another guest coming in as well. But really, what really fascinates me, Tawana, about this whole topic is, as investors of the 10K project and also as entrepreneurs who are looking at starting businesses, we often hear that we're not represented enough in tech. We're not represented enough in STEM at all. And a lot of us think that we have to be coders in order to be in STEM. That's not true. However, some of us may wonder how we can flex our entrepreneurial muscles and get into STEM as well. Or how can we be smarter investors to know like what's really happening over the next 10 to 20 years? Because let's be honest, Tawana, I'm sure you would agree with this, that the sophisticated investors that we're seeing, they're looking at, the things that are going to be popping in 5, 10,
Absolutely.
15 years, and they're investing in those things now.
Yep,
So,
I agree 100%. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's why tonight is even more exciting than just knowing that I get to now say I have met two Black futurists, right?
Yes.
So above and beyond that, to know that I get to take tonight's information and use it as part of my investment strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is awesome. So super excited. I know everyone in the community is coming in. I know they're all excited.
Yes.
We've got our first guest here. So I don't know if you want to get started and tell anyone who's new with us who we are, why we're here, how we can help them.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not going to do the presentation tonight. I'm just going to say welcome to the 10K project. We are the largest community of investors who actively fund Black-owned businesses. The way that it works is every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we bring an entrepreneur in front of the community who is raising funding through something called equity crowdfunding. And just so you know, equity crowdfunding is governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA. So these entrepreneurs come, they present their business to us. We are able to ask them questions. And then if you as an individual likes that business, you're able to invest in that company in exchange for equity or shares in that business. And oftentimes, minimum investment is as little as $100 for you to invest in these companies. So Tawana can add more and give us a hint of what's tomorrow night's Bet on Black pitch.
Yes. So if you're interested in joining us on this journey, go to the10kproject.com. If you're not already a member, if you're already a member, you guys know I want you to take benefit of take good use of make good use of all of your benefits. So make sure you're putting your information in the directory so that you can find people who are, or so that people can find you who are looking for your skill set and your talents. So I always want to say that because for all of you members, you're not taking full advantage of your membership. And we don't just want you to be members on paper. We want you to take advantage of everything we're providing. Yeah. So I'll say that. Tomorrow's founder on our Bet on Black pitch, it's tech. I always get so stumped. I don't want to tell you too much because I want you to be excited when they come, but it's
we're
tech,
always excited.
and it is. I'm gonna think of a better teaser. I'll think of a better teaser before we end. I'll close with a better teaser. I may even text him and say, "What's a teaser for who you are?" So,
all right, everybody. Okay, so let's get started with our guests for this evening. One of our guests is here. The other one is coming. I know because he said we confirmed with both of you. So. Tonight is all about the future, what the future is going to look like in the next 10 years, let's say by 2030, by 2050, various things that we're going to see. Also, I want to talk about it in reality of how our lives are going to adjust as well, because there was a McKinsey report pre-pandemic that said that 4.5 Black Americans are going to lose their job to automation. We're expecting perhaps more than that. Jobs are going to be shifting. The way we make money is going to shift. The way that we are employed is going to shift. So, we're here to have Bryndan Moore talk to us about all of that and more. So everybody put an exclamation point in the chat here for Bryndan. We're going to bring him up. Hello.
Hello.
How
Tawana,
are you?
Suri, thanks so much for the invite.
Hello,
I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah. Now you have a podcast. I found you on LinkedIn because of your podcast. So first of all, Tawana had the first question. What's a futurist? And how in the world did you
become one?
A futurist? Yes.
Well,
Bryndan, I said nobody told me about that in elementary school.
I think that there are different ways that people use the term. The way that we use it, it's really an empowering stance to say, look, we ultimately are taking ownership of what happens next by the work that we're doing today. So we spend part of our time in this imagined future. And so on the nerd side, there's a bit of, my co-host and I have known each other for decades. So we've seen all the same movies, listened to all the same thing, read all the same books. And then the time we also got a bunch of degrees, which is fun. So I think if I were to list a superpower that I have personally, it's access. And if you've seen anything about our podcast, a lot of it is interviews, and they're like luminaries. There are people whose work today is either solving a problem that we have in our community or in our country or in the world. And I'm always asking them, how is your work going to impact the planet or just my neighborhood if you're wildly successful? And so it's like I said, it's an empowering use of the term futurist because I am investigating and answering sometimes my own questions about what will the world be for my grandkids and great grandkids one day, and what can I do today that will impact that trajectory. Make sense?
That makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. So what I'd like to do, if you wouldn't mind, I found a really cool 3-minute video. Now I wasn't able to find one that I really liked that was super short with like somebody talking. So everyone, you're gonna have to come to the screen and read for 3 minutes. 2 minutes and 52 seconds. But I thought this was a really cool, quick way for us to kind of get up to speed with some of the things that we may see. And then, of course, we want to talk to Bryndan about some of the things that he is hearing and discussing with people that he's interviewing, how they're going to affect the Black community, how they're going to affect society just in general. So with that, I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and we're going to go to this video here, which is it's called What the Year 2030 Will Look Like: 7 Future Tech Innovations. And let me just turn on my sound. Here we go. Okay, everybody. Okay. So that's part of the future. Future here. I saw some others that had some, there were a couple of things in that video that was kind of scary to me. But I saw a couple of like some of the 2050 ones, and I'm like, oh, okay. So some of it could end up having a right to privacy concerns that I would have. But, Bryndan, why don't you tell us a little bit about,
I have a lot to share with you guys. I got a
lot
to share with you. Let me tell you why I have so much to share with you. Yes. I'll tell you why. There are two main pillars, main verticals that we should be talking about between your audience and what you guys do and what we do in my experience. Number one, start where we already are. You just played a video with 7 trends that someone forecasted based on tech that are coming up. Well, I'm a paid tech expert for one of the largest tech shows in the world. So if you've heard of CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, happens once a year in Las Vegas. So when people register for CES, they can buy their individual conference ticket. And then there's an upsell for, do you want to take a tour with an industry expert who will walk you through the trends of today? I'm one of those guys. So for the last couple of years, I get to CES early. I get early access. I walk around the whole floor before anybody's there. I meet the presenters, find out what's cool, what's not so cool, what do I want to talk about? And then when the show actually starts, when executives start showing up, some of them are assigned to me. I'll take guys out. They put on their little headphones, and I walk around like it's a what do you call it? Elementary school, field trip. And I've got the mic and I'm walking them through the floor, and it's fantastic. So some of the stuff that you guys showed on that video, I don't agree with all of it. But what I did before coming on the show today was just pull my notes from 2022 CES, which was in January, and kind of pulled up some of the trends because I did my homework. I looked up what the 10K project is. I looked you both up. You're doing incredible things. And I figured that if we're talking about entrepreneurs, and that is like up and down the scale, right? Some people are support level entrepreneurs that support other entrepreneurs, and some are, trying to hit the grand slam. Knowing the trends of what's predicted and what companies are already spending billions of dollars on to develop and bring to the market would be helpful. So I have a list there. We'll talk about that. And second, I worked at a startup most recently, based out of Santa Monica, and it's very much in line with your mission. They've just been acquired by Greenwood Bank. Oh. And so their mission, it was a startup called Valence. I was a director of community there. And their mission was to basically support Black entrepreneurs. It was founded by a VC who said, I only write checks, like 1% of the checks I write go to people of color. That's inclusive of Black folks. And I want to do better on, increase that number. So when I first came in, one of the things that we set up early was I didn't know much about venture capital. And I set up interviews with some of the top VCs in the world. I mean, the guys who are on the Midas list. Midas list is, somebody who's had $1 billion exit, or, it's just incredible stuff. And so we've talked to those guys just to get a basic understanding and be able to explain to folks how business finance works. Some people were talking about, the VC route, and others were talking about how the VC route just wasn't for them. I also talked to several founders. I think of immediately of a young lady named Aisha Bo, who was a NASA engineer, and now she has a at-home STEM science kit that's in Target, and she's self-funded. So, there's some stuff to talk about there as well. I just want to make sure I'm supporting areas of the conversation you guys want to go in. And I'd love for Maurice to get on this conversation because he's pretty smart and slightly funny. But I'll keep texting him.
Slightly funny.
Yeah, no, that's
moderately
fine.
Funny. So where are you guys based?
So I'm in Maryland, and Tawana
and I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
In Louisville.
Got it. Fantastic.
But we're all over the country. Actually, we have people outside of the United States as well that are a part of our network.
Okay.
And we're very much about building Black wealth. right? That's why we call this whole series Building Black Wealth. And,
Fantastic.
two of the greatest ways to do it is through business ownership, which we're buying businesses, we're starting businesses, we're funding them.
Yep.
And in my opinion, like us having financial literacy, buying homes, buying other alternative assets, things like that, stuff that the wealthy do.
Yep.
Now we're able to do it as well. I would love to know maybe 2 or 3 of the trends that you see that you are you feel are going to be most impactful.
Yeah.
That we really should pay attention to.
Right. So I wrote a list.
Okay.
The first one on the list is let's talk about healthcare and how healthcare is being fueled and impacted by the further use of tech. And I recall I was talking to a gentleman who was a physician, and he had a device that was about the size of my mouse here. And his point was, I can treat people. It's a diagnostic tool. I can treat people in rural areas that are way out that would take an hour to drive to a doctor or something with this diagnostic level tool from their home. So if you're a rancher or farmer and you live somewhere way out or you're a homesteader, but you have reasonable access to the internet, I can use this device to have you put it in your ear, which has a sensor in it that allows me to see in your ear, to take a temperature in your ear. I can make you put it in your throat. I can, different things you could do with it that would allow him to just tell you, look, leave right now and go to the hospital, or don't, you don't have to. And it's a nice, just one example of the trend in spending that we're seeing and going to continue to see of companies using sensors and devices to get involved in healthcare, both in physical health and mental health. I have friends who are psychiatrists and therapists, and they've got their own businesses on the side that are, they don't bill insurance, they bill direct, but they schedule therapy calls with anyone, anywhere in the world. And that's great. That's fantastic, because medicine is medicine, right? Medicine is good. And using tech to do that, number one, creates jobs, because you have to set up the tech, you have to understand how to service the tech, and it also creates a better living circumstance for, the end customer.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because not only do I think about rural America, but I also think about places in Africa that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, or places around the world that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, where, one of the other things that's said in that video was that the internet was going to be a right of all people. And I did read during the pandemic, for example, that a lot of our students in certain parts of the inner cities fell behind because the internet was so awful here in the United States, So now we're saying, okay, internet is going to be a right for people, just like having a telephone is. And they're setting it up so it could get to the remotest places in the world, even like Antarctica and places like that. The one thing that does concern me is the implanting of the sensors. I don't care for that.
I didn't agree with that. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think it'll happen. Not in the time frame that was covered.
It seemed too soon for that. 2030 that was like a 2060 in my mind, or 2075.
Even I saw some videos where they would even have the sensors just on the clothing, and it would send the data to whomever, and
that's this year.
I know that Talicia's in here as well. Like, well, see, I don't use those types of things. I know that people have the apps and things like that. Like, Talicia's saying biometrics via wearables.
Yep.
Talicia, if you want to come on the panel, let me know. Talicia's our resident tech person.
Talicia's right
as well.
Talicia's right that you might not be doing it, but it's happening all over the place, and even in simple, innocuous places like gaming, right? It's happening. It's already in use. It's being sold. People are voluntarily buying in. But on the note of internet as a right, there's 2 names that I'd like everybody to write down.
Okay.
Vicki Robinson, Vickie Robinson. She works for Microsoft. I interviewed her on the Black Futurist podcast to talk just about that issue, about how in many neighborhoods, internet is not ubiquitous. Like everybody doesn't have it, every family doesn't have it, and the fact that not only is the world behind, but my neighborhood is getting behind. So how's my kid, number one, coping with not sitting amongst his peers, not sitting in front of a teacher, but now having to go out in front of Taco Bell to turn his or her homework in, and that was a real story. So we talked about that on the podcast. So Vicki Robinson, if you go on the Black Futurist, look for the name Vicki Robinson. We talked about the work she's doing to make internet a ubiquitous right. Now, here's the converse opinion. The other name is Tarik Brooks, Tarik. Tarik Brooks is the president of Combs Enterprise. So Sean Combs has his array of companies. Tarik is the president. And Tarik is a self-proclaimed capitalist and a good friend of mine. And when we talked about making internet a right, he had some pushback. So I think that would be another interesting show to check out, to say, hey, this came up naturally in conversation, and these are two perspectives on what that might look like or not look like in the future. So that's pretty cool. Another trend I have is, I kind of touched on it, more immersive entertainment. So there's no end to spending that we'll do on our own entertainment, or if we let them go unchecked, what our kids will spend time-wise on their own entertainment. You know, I don't know if your households are like many, and many like mine. I thought I was going to cancel cable, and I ended up instead keeping cable and buying the other streaming services. So now I'm like paying double, which is nuts. So apparently more immersive entertainment is something that's definitely happening. And one of those buzzwords, of course, is the metaverse and what that will look like when it's totally fleshed out, which is, you know, if you're willing to put on the Oculus, which I'm not because it's hot. I don't know if you've tried one of those things on. You really end up transforming your experience. You can watch a movie where it looks like it's on the wall while also, you know, I know here's how it's actually being used right now. I have a buddy who's in car design, and where they used to fly engineers across the world to stand in a room and watch the clay carving of the car body. Instead, they just meet once a day or a couple times a week inside the Oculus to go look at the new model and the changes they do. Wow. So certain industries are already developing these things that are being used and that we'll eventually adopt, whether we resist or not. And I think the point in all these trends is to say, if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about getting into business, get into a business that is somehow supporting or at least conscious of the trends for which billions of dollars are being spent. Catch the wave, right? If you're an accountant, you're safe no matter where you go. You be a great accountant. But if you're a photographer, you know, maybe you should be thinking about, who should I be marketing to? Is this an industry that's growing or industry that's contracting?
Tawana, I know you have more questions.
Wow. First of all, Maurice joined us, so let's welcome him.
Oh, hi, Maurice. You're not on camera.
I know he was
futurist, so I know he knows how to use Zoom.
Now, he's on travel. I'll say that much.
Oh, he's on travel.
And I know he's dealing with, because I'm texting him on the side, he lives in the Pacific Northwest, and he's flown all the way diagonally across the country to Atlanta. So he's trying to dial in from a hotel. And I think that might be some of the issue he's having. But I'll take up the slack as usual, Dolberry.
Yeah. Oh, no. No, whenever he gets situated, we definitely want to hear from him too. Are there any other technologies? I know I have a list, and Tawana has a list of questions to ask.
And if you have questions in the community, go ahead and put them in the
please
Q&A
ask.
as well.
And I'm also on YouTube. Look, this is our highest numbers on YouTube. People, everybody in YouTube, thumbs up the video, please, and ask your questions. Facebook as well. I see all of you. So if you have questions, let us know. So back to you, Bryndan, are there any other technologies that you think we should be paying attention to?
Definitely. So Internet of Things, which has to do with the connectivity between different devices, right? So IoT is what it's often called, and where you'll see it in your own lives is, and who's on the forefront of that, let's say a company like Samsung, who is a Korean company, and they're doing an incredible amount of sales. And they're on the forefront of a lot of technologies that involve screens and IoT. So they have the smart kitchen, which is refrigerator talks to the dishwasher, talks to, you know, the air conditioner or the vacuum cleaner, and everything somehow talks to each other for whatever benefits. the easiest pill to swallow is to say the refrigerator. You can walk up to the refrigerator, which number one, you could choose the color of. So there's like 4 panels, top and bottom. You can choose individual panels, color, so it matches your kitchen motif. And you could, with your hand, write need more milk, or you can touch a button, touch the screen and hold it, and it'll go from opaque so you can see inside the refrigerator. Or you can say, hey, look, it'll sense, let's say I'm short on eggs. So it can automatically add eggs to your shopping list. And then when you're at the grocery store, you can pull up your shopping list and say, let me see what's in the fridge so I can see it visually, or let's see what's on the list. Now, these things sound like the Jetsons to an older guy like me, but I've seen them, I've touched them. They're being sold today. And so that's IoT. And that's like, so when we talk about interconnectivity in terms of the home, we talk about things like the television and the kitchen, but let's talk about the same thing when it comes to cities. So I live in a town in North Carolina, small town, getting larger, called Cary. Now, one of the things they recently did in my town, which is the first town in the state to do it, is they've triggered all of the lights at every intersection to be responsive to fire engines. So a fire engine will never hit a red light.
Wow.
That's IoT at work. That's the deal. It's like, how do we use interconnectivity that we are already experiencing, because everybody's carrying around their smartphone? How do we use that for communal good? And that's happening already. Any questions or comments? I saw somebody mention something about IoT in the chat.
Yeah, Talicia's saying IoT is quite impactful in healthcare as well.
Yep.
And then we had Jackie. I think Jackie's saying she doesn't care too much for IoT because of, conspiracy theorists.
Of course.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. What's the most invasive thing you've seen?
Oh, well, shoot. First of all, I gotta let you know about myself. I don't have Alexa. I go to my brother's house and he has Alexa in the kitchen. So I, of course, talk to Alexa in his kitchen. Alexa, order purple socks. Alexa, order this. And he gets ticked off. But I don't like any of that stuff. I don't want a hot mic in my house unless I turned it on personally. And, I know a bunch of IT guys. So these guys develop smart locks on the doors. But if you go to their front door, they don't have that. They have a lock and key because they understand there's other smart guys out here doing stuff. Right. So
hackers, I mean, they are getting very smart and very organized as well. There are these huge crime syndications. So we did have somebody in YouTube asking a question for you as well. Doc Lady asked, which tech areas seem like they are flourishing now from the end user's perspective, however they are actually contracting?
I don't know that I have an answer for that. And I'll sit on that for the rest of the conversation. But I know that my thinking and reading and interviews have been focused on where I already see the money going. So these places are already expanding. So I haven't spent that much attention to say, the question kind of alludes to saying that, hey, are we being hoodwinked? Is there an area which says it's expanding, but it's actually contracting? And I really don't. I wouldn't have focused on that. So I don't probably have data or a great answer for that.
Okay.
Did Maurice just turn his mic on?
No, his mic is off now. So and so is his camera. I do want to do my PSA to everybody, especially our men. Appliance repair leading to robot repair. That's all I'm going to say. We've been talking about Mike Sneed for how many weeks, Tawana? Months.
Several months.
Months. And family businesses, that is going to be a huge, huge industry. I was speaking with a woman this past weekend who's in appliance repair, and they're going to, she's already working on robots. Just FYI with regards to that. JT Fax is saying, how do you think national politics will affect future technology in the next 10 years?
National politics in the United States is capitalist politics. So if there's money to be made, policy will be made to back it up. That's just the bottom line. That is America's credo. It's a cash grab country, right? We're here because this is the open market, and we create a free market system, and we participate in that market system. And that's why we're here. talking about becoming an entrepreneur, because you also want to participate in the free market system and you want to charge for your service. So policy is going to back up what somewhat safe entrepreneurialism and maybe even some unsafe entrepreneurialism until it goes to the point where it needs to be called back. Maurice Dolberry.
Hello, Maurice. Hello. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Oh, he's saying we can't
still
hear
can't
you.
hear
I hear you.
Yeah, your microphone isn't up
Oh,
yet.
he looks so sad just now.
But you look good though.
You look good, brother.
You do look good, brother.
Now I'll say
we got to hear you soon.
let me throw this in also. So I had a mentee that has been my mentee since he's been about 12 years old. And now he's a grown man who has worked in several of my businesses. And then one day we had a conversation about the business he wanted to start for himself. Mm-hmm. And he had this passion for tea. You know, he's a Caribbean dude, born in Brooklyn, wanted to start a tea brand. And so we wrote out a plan. Well, here's what we got to do. We're going to do education first. We're going to go get whatever education we can get. Then we put him to work. Said, in addition to your full-time job, you're going to go work at this tea shop in downtown Manhattan, which he did for a year for like pennies. The guy has an MBA. He's working for $8 an hour, right? Then for a whole year, we did every festival, coffee and tea festival in New York City, right? And then after that year, we opened the first brick and mortar brand. And here's a picture of Dr. Maurice Dolberry, who's in Atlanta right now, standing outside the 3rd Brooklyn Tea Cafe.
Wow.
Down there in Atlanta. And that was earlier today. You can see he's got the same shirt on. And that's a brand that the aesthetic is designed in my house. And the tea is curated by a tea sommelier, a black tea sommelier, who went to Hampton University. It's a fantastic thing. Great success.
Wonderful,
he
wonderful.
Is now on with us by audio, right, Dr. Maurice?
I think I'm good.
Hey.
Okay. Hey, we're off brand now because normally I don't come in with audio like this, but hey, I'm glad to be able to join in. Y'all can actually hear me. So
we are glad
we can shout
you're
out
here.
Absolutely Brooklyn Tea and during my little trip. So.
Yes. So everybody throw an exclamation point in for Dr. Maurice. Dr. Maurice Dolberry is here in the building with us. So I'll start off with the same question that Tawana first asked Bryndan before you came in, which was, how did you become a Black futurist? A futurist, period. Not just Black, but a futurist, period. How'd you get into this?
You know, it's funny because I'm assuming right. You know, I think B and I probably have, and he's going to share the same story. So, you know, give me if he's already, you know, both of us growing up watching Star Trek, you know, Star Wars, understanding the character of Guinan. I see the heads nodding. You know, you talk about Whoopi Goldberg said. Can I is that a new piece? I dare. So one of the reasons why Whoopi Goldberg decided to be on Star Trek, one, she grew up just a huge fan of the show. Mm-hmm. But second, she was like, you know, when you see things that are about the future, there are no Black people in them, right? Like, do Black people make it to space? Do we make it to the 24th century? You know, what state are we in, you know, when we do? And so it was always having that question, and then meeting like-minded folks, you know, like Bryndan, who were also into, you know, comic books and, you know, into sci-fi. And in that genre in particular, especially, you know, growing into my 70s, 80s, 90s, we just didn't exist. The assumption is that everyone was white and male, you know, and so, yeah, becoming a Black futurist was a part of just that, you know, being a sci-fi nerd and a kid, but then in getting bigger than that and thinking about Black folks in the future outside of comic books and sci-fi television, right? No, really, what does it mean in terms of where we are as people in the future? And so, yeah, that really started it for me. We have nurtured and curated it in a lot of different ways. The latest iteration being our podcast, The Black Futurist, but yeah, something that has always been a part of who I am. And, you know,
there's a part you're skipping that has to do with credibility, because there's not just, hey, we watch these things, but we met because I was in engineering school and you're in biology school and you wanted to get your PhD. So like, it's not like just these two guys who sit in the theater like Bill and Ted just watching the stuff. Like we actually have something to contribute.
And there is that academic side, right? My biology background in, biology, engineering. I was a science teacher and have been a science educator for a long time. And so it really is just a part of both who we are as people, right? If you look at the world in a scientific way, you look at the world in terms of like, here are all the individual pieces and how they fit together, how the pieces change as they fit together. But this is a way by which we can, for example, answer questions. It's a way that we learn how to ask questions about the world around us. I tell a story all the time. Like I learned about inertia and momentum and these notions that were interesting to me in science, right? Kinetic energy. I learned about those things as a b-boy, breakdancing. To make a very, very long story, very, very short, I used to lose to this dude who had a curl. And I would lose to the dude that had a curl because when he would start popping, right, he would pop, but he would shake his head like this. And so when he would move his head became in motion while his curl stayed at rest. And then once his hair got into momentum and went in motion while his head was at rest, so now his curl is shaking on the top of his head, right? So like, we see, he's popping harder than you, like Sean be getting you because he's like popping harder because his curl be shaking. Now, I didn't have the science language to say like, oh, well, this is an inertia. This is an inertia, an example of inertia, an object in motion, that object rest, object sleep. It was like, yo, I got to get Sean Jones. So either I got to get a curl or at least let me understand why I'm losing, right? So I've always been that kid. I've always thought that way. And so like the other part of the story is instead of a piece of cardboard, my parents, I grew up in the Midwest. Parents got basement done and kitchen redone. Right, they had that little nasty yellow linoleum that all houses from the 50s and 60s had in them. And so instead of a piece of cardboard, I had a piece of linoleum because I was like, if I put on my nylon windbreaker on this piece of linoleum while Sean is over there spinning on that cardboard with his cotton on, so friction, centrifugal force, because am I going to slide down Tony Ransom's driveway? Because damn, I say this whole government, right? Am I going to slide down Tony's driveway because, so like all these things were in my mind. I was always a science guy, always, and even like hard science guy. But that carried it again into the, like B said, into the artistic side and to looking at things like sci-fi.
Yeah. And Latrice in YouTube said that Soul Glow was everywhere.
Just look at soul.
And I was losing. I was losing to the dude with the stain on his collar, man, because of inertia.
In the movie,
and his curl.
In the movie, the Soul Glow guy lost too. He lost the princess.
He did.
Daryl Jinx. Mr. Daryl Jinx eventually caught an L. He lost to a king.
But you know what? You were a winner. You are a winner. So
we've got a great question in here.
Yes.
Anonymous is asking about the looming recession. So our economist came last week, I think that was, and we had a great conversation around the recession. And so Anonymous is asking, what areas should we be investing in for recession proofing from a futuristic standpoint?
Education. Get your certifications up. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with one of my sons this morning about Google and their partnership with some online course software. I forgot what it's called. Coursera, right. To make their certification course free, at the end of which you get the certification. And I incentivize them. We have in my family, we have several little guys who are Maurice's nephew. All my little nephews and nieces and all that, we're all on one Slack channel. And so I put an incentive in there. It's like, look, if any of you guys finish this within 6 months from the time you start, I will pay it back. I will reimburse you for the price of Coursera. So it leaves them with some responsibility to do, and then incentive, they'll end up with a certification as well as they would have paid nothing. So the thing I would say invest in this time when we're talking about a looming recession is invest in your ability to charge more for your time, be it via your business or a job, by getting more certifications.
What about you, Maurice?
I would add to that a notion of investing in yourself, right? And that is investing in yourself, right? Educating yourself. I was having a conversation similarly with some of my nephews talking about name, image, and license. And so he's a star athlete going into high school. But bigger than that, for anyone who is controlling their name, the NIL, right? We've heard that before, name, image, and license. But what does that actually mean? It means that everything that you do is a brand. How you curate your image on social media is a part of how you're branded. So investing into coaching and consultants who can help you with how to build your own brand, and not from a marketing standpoint, but again, from that, let's keep it with, with us futurists, right? With the sci-fi standpoint, right? Aside, not without the fi. For those of us who need to get better at our social media interactions, those of us who need to get up on TikTok and get all that stuff right. You know what I mean? Like, but to invest in your own education, look for someone who is in the more knowledgeable other who is in your field or in your preferred field, and not just from a networking standpoint, pay folks. Literally, if we're talking about financially investment, pay the bread for someone who can coach you through what you're trying to do. I've done it, and I've done that for people. It is a way to, in and of itself, build your own business from a financial standpoint. But again, bigger than that, it is an investment in your ability to, if ultimately that's part of it, like do some capitalism, to make your own money. But ultimately, investing in yourself is going to be, it's the most important investment, right? But investing in yourself is it's that direct way to be able to say, I am improving the very human resource that's at the core of what I'm trying to improve, which is myself as a human.
Yeah. So Talisha is saying investing in a personal avatar that can traverse all of the metaverses, I think is what she's saying, reality and beyond. Charles is saying I'm sorry? Charles is saying,
no, I just said, yo.
Yeah. Put on your oxygen mask first is what Charles is saying. I have another investment that I think you kind of said it, Maurice alluded to it, which is investing in going to conferences and meetups and like meeting people, going to conferences for the knowledge, but also meeting people as well. With everything that's happening, since you talked about a recession, if you are laid off, if you're not so sure about your job, I'm even reading about people that, were laid off. And I saw a post earlier today in LinkedIn, and the guy worked with the resume writer and got a 55% salary increase. 55%, right? Because he invested in himself, but, he also got a new job. But I think also investing in conferences, meetups, things like that, in order to meet the right people so that you are able to know a lot of people in your industry. So if something happens, you could start reaching out to your network. There's a status 40% of jobs are never posted online. Somebody says, oh, we have this opening. Oh, I know Tawana over here. She could do it. Let me call her really quickly and see if she'll come over. So Latoya is asking, are we allowed to post our business in the chat? Yeah, Tawana, we've let people, it depends, right? On what the business is.
Depends on what your business is, Latoya. Is it in line with what our mission is? If it's in line with the mission, post away.
Yeah, and also make sure if you're a member that it's in the expert directory as well. Charles did have a question for the two of you. Afrofuturism versus Afro-pessimism, which is best?
What do you got, Maurice? Because I don't have that pessimism in me.
It's funny
that's
because
called history.
All right, I'll dip into my other bag here in a different part of my life. When I was teaching in the classroom, and I was in the classroom for a couple of decades, still miss it, but Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of my favorite people to teach. Ta-Nehisi Coates is at the forefront in my mind. I'm biased. We went to Howard, so we immediately gonna go at you. But he is one of the foremost thinkers in terms of Afro-pessimism, but Afro-pessimism not as the opposite of Afrofuturism, but Afro-pessimism, just from a different standpoint. So for those of us, if you're familiar with Between the World and Me, right, it's in the vein of James Baldwin and The Fire Next Time. My done is letter, James Baldwin speaking to his nephew James. This is Ta-Nehisi Coates speaking to his son Samori. That's the gist of Ta-Nehisi Coates' book. And Between the World and Me. And it is at times bleak. It's a very scathing critique of the United States and white supremacy within it. And it pulls no punches in terms of Ta-Nehisi telling his son, and this is what the world is like. It's not for the purpose of telling him, and now you're going to fail, right? It's to tell him, like, here are the challenges that you face. Mm-hmm. And now that you are aware of the challenges, you understand that part of your life, a significant part of your life as a Black man here in the United States, is going to be facing down those challenges. So I couch Afro-pessimism in those types of terms, more towards an academic side, but from a colloquial side, right, we think of pessimism in terms of like, so we have no future. And mm-hmm. Afro-pessimism can be really hyper-futuristic because it can go and say, now sucks so badly that really all we have to invest in is the future, right? And so we are going to invest adamantly into that future. We're going to put our money, we're going to put our, our time, our effort, our human resource into it. But yeah, now sucks, right? And so the focus is on the challenges and the problems that we face in I think in terms of, African-American folks, in the United States, and our anthem talking about stony the road we trod, pessimism and futurism is balanced, in our ethos in terms of, who we are as a people, how we hear.
Yeah. We have a question in Facebook from Lauren. Where do you see Internet 3.0 and the metaverse for Black consumers?
I see it as inevitable, going to happen, and it's something that we need to stay on the forefront in terms of our own education. I'm actually working on several Web3 projects right now, all based on and focused on community. So unlike, let's say, in the NFT space, the Bored Ape Yacht Club and those things, which are basically art for the sake of selling it at a higher value, there's the other end of the spectrum, which are maybe less publicized, which are people using tokens to give people access and authority. So removing the need for trust from the situation to say, hey, look, for example, there's a company called Soliloquy. I don't know the name. It starts with an S, but they're creating ways that you can use the chain to create investment clubs where everything is tracked on the block. Mm-hmm. And we're using that in the house to teach the young guys how to pool their money, how to invest. And basically the way those things work is, similar probably to the way your program works to some extent. It is people invest. The pot is now 100% of what it is. Therefore, your share of votes is in direct mm-hmm. proportion to your share of the pot. Yeah. And if you want to sell a position or part of your position, the work that we've done to grow that pot now is reflected in the buy-in price. So that stuff is out there. It's something that we have to learn. And I think that we have to start with just the simple understanding. And Maurice has pulled my shirt on this before in saying that a lot of times Black people in the diaspora, not just United States, we have a hard time saying we don't know something or acknowledging that we don't know something enough to get help and ask. Mm-hmm. And so the first level of understanding what's going on with, what she asked was Web3 is, what is it? And what is the first lesson that we should learn? The first lesson that we all should learn is probably, what is a wallet and how do I get one? Even if I don't have anything in it. What is a wallet? How do I get one? Then we'll talk about how do we bulletproof that wallet. And the information is out there. There's people on YouTube that will tell you how to do it. And I just think that if anyone on here is interested in being a Web3 entrepreneur, I would start by consuming that stuff and then also start by producing that stuff. Like the idea that I could learn that from someone who has a similar cultural experience to me versus learning from someone else is important. So, don't just consume it and reproduce it so that you can become a resource. And in your own teaching of basic Web3 concepts, you'll learn more. I think Web3 is a big deal. It's going to be a big deal in my household. It's going to be a big deal in terms of financial steering that I'm doing with my children and my nephews and nieces. I do not want us to be left behind. Bottom line, it's coming. Yeah. It's billions of dollars being spent on it. The company you knew as Facebook changed their name because Web3 is here. So if big business is doing that, your household should be doing it as well. You should be learning what it means.
Absolutely. And I just want to add also the other piece to that, if you want to be an entrepreneur in this space, is focus on how to keep your consumers safe in the space.
That's right.
You can tackle that as well. Then that puts you kind of at the top of the playing field.
Absolutely.
Especially for our people, because we will not always go into it as educated as we need to. And we will be victims of those who will take advantage of us. So make sure that we're looking out for each other as we're cultivating what this space means for us.
Yeah.
And I did put in a resource for everyone. Nadja Roberts, member of the 10K Project, close friend of the 10K Project. If you want to know anything about Bitcoin, crypto, wallets, anything like that, Nadja Roberts is an excellent resource. So again, I put her link tree in for everybody. Also, Talisha in our Discord group, Black Blockchain Consultants, is really great for like overall education of what's happening with regards to Web3, NFTs, blockchain, things like that. We have the conversations in there, and there's also a course that you can take through Black Blockchain Consultants as well if you want to learn, have an overview of that.
Nice.
The really big thing is for us to not only be consumers with these things, because we usually get to the technology way too late. We are still early with all of this technology. We can still have a seat at the table. We could create our own tables with all of this technology. We don't have to, be 10 years from now saying, oh, now's the time for me to get into, no, that's going to be too late. So when I talked about going to the conferences, going to these conferences now, don't be afraid to be the only Black person in there. I will be the only Black person in there. And I'm like, I'm here, and oftentimes they're looking for diversity so much that, they will come to you. And if you're able to, converse with them and you have a basic understanding, you'll probably get picked up by some of these companies if you want a job, if you want to do some freelancing for them, etc. So
can I step back in here for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think this next piece kind of ties this one question on the screen here back to what you're talking about. And that is the question on screen is by Kevin Stewart. It's in the chat here. It says, Hans Tung of GGV Capital, who has been listed on 10 consecutive years in the Forbes Midas list, credits his success in early stage investing to understanding history. Do you believe understanding history can assist with investing? Now, this is a key question. And it also ties back into Web3. I've interviewed Hans. Hans is the guy who got behind Airbnb, who got behind Peloton, who got behind everything big, right? He's the guy. And I sat down with Hans for an hour to talk about whatever. He would answer anything I asked him. And so the question of, do you believe understanding history can assist with investing? 100%. And without a sense of history, you're going to be less impactful. And to the end of that, I want to say in this entrepreneurs group, I think we should be looking at history and culture to solve problems that we have, solve our own problems. We talk about Web3, we haven't even scratched the surface on things that can be done. All we've talked about in terms of Web3 in the major discourse is how I can, draw a picture, put it out there, and then somebody might buy it and it'll be worth more. Or we've talked about, if you've delved in, maybe about, Ethereum and second layer coins and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, I'm much more interested to hear what alternate universe, because you're no longer in biology, you're teaching multicultural education, I'd like to know how biologist Maurice would use the blockchain to further his pursuits in biology. The only reason that's going to happen is if he has some sense of history, some sense of the problems presented of the day and historical problems, and starts creatively thinking about a solution given the tools of the day. So to the Hans Tung question, history 100%. Also think about the problems, historical problems and modern day problems that you might solve, and then familiarize yourself with the tools of the day, including blockchain. Because if you're still talking about the fax machine, we're talking about problems of communication today, we're all messed up. We gotta go way ahead. And so I would say yes, Web3 is a big deal. Understanding history is a big deal, and focus on solving problems that you see firsthand, because you'll be the most effective people to solve them. Sorry,
Dr. Maurice. No, Dr. Maurice.
I would agree in particular with the question about history. History creates context, and oftentimes we, on the personal side, when we're engaging with people who may have a desire to operate in an ahistorical context. So what does that mean? Colorblind folks, right? People are like, well, I don't see color. And I consistently tell people, you know, they say, well, I don't see color. Like, well, I want you to see me as a black dude. Like, if you were to describe me, like, yeah, you know, Mo, short black dude, bald head, you know, like that's a part of who I am. Even more importantly than just being able to describe me for the crime blotter, right? That's a part of my identity. The color of my skin and everything that it means is a part of who I am. And so walking that into a workplace situation, into the scenario where you are the only black person, and shout out to you for having that courage, you know, being in that type of space as well, right? That it means that for folks who are operating again with that colorblind or ahistorical context, there are going to be gigantic blind spots for them moving forward with understanding how and why you move. For those of us who have entrepreneurial motivations that have to do with empowering black folks, that's going to sound weird or different or even off-putting, oftentimes off-putting, you know, to people who are in those places, because they're like, well, I don't see color, right? Racism is an issue. You're here. And so again, that because history creates that context, you know, you can create your own set of historical context as well, but you have to come in with an understanding of them. Just, you know, many of us are familiar with when they first created the faucets, you know, the automatic faucets where you put your hands under them and, you know, the water comes out, and they were based on photocells, and not just the color of your skin, but how melanated the cells in your skin are and how much, you know, light absorb. So brown people were putting their hands under when they first came out, were like, you know, wash my hands, right? And if you think about that, you're like, that means that this product got so far to the point where it's in the wild and people have invested millions, if not billions, into it, and it don't work in India. Right? There's 1 billion people on the planet who can't use, much less the entire African continent, right?
Yes.
So that means that at no point was anyone in the conversation that had a historical context that not like, hey, stuff has been racist, but to say, hey, you know, there are other people who aren't white who might want to use our product. And historically, those have been the people who have been ignored, right? So I have that perspective, and oh wait, this thing needs to work for people who aren't white, right? You know, so again, operating in an ahistorical context causes you to make not only interpersonal and interactive mistakes that are problems, but it also again causes folks, you know, to put out products that are disastrous.
Yeah.
And
you
so,
know,
go ahead, Sheree. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as you were talking, it caused me to Google about AI that saw Black people as gorillas. Remember that?
Yeah.
The controversy a few years ago, you know, so, and a lot of that was because we weren't seated at the table when they were creating this, or nowhere to be found, right? We weren't part of any of the alpha tests, the MVP product tests, the beta tests, nothing like that. And all of a sudden, you know, we put some Black person put the final product up, and their reaction was, well, we have to get rid of gorillas from the algorithm because we can't figure out how to decipher a Black person, from an animal. So what you're saying is so important because now we're talking about stuff going into our bodies. Now we're talking about stuff going into our ears, as Bryndan was saying, to tell our temperatures. We as Black women have, a different BMI than white women, right? So, the way that our systems work sometimes is different. And I think that, I gave like a very elementary, example to what you're saying, but looking 20, 30 years down the road, if we're not, part of the conversation, and if we're not beta testing some of these products, then we could end up having repercussions that could be a lot greater than just a picture.
Absolutely. And it goes back to us being more than just consumers, right? So if we're building the thing, right, then we don't have to worry about that being the outcome. And as we talk about Web3 and, we could build our own the metaverse is a multitude of places, right? We can build our own metaverse so that we're not discriminated against, our people are not just experiencing discrimination when they're playing within the metaverse or living within the metaverse or, doing business within the metaverse, if it's our metaverse. And so I think we just have to look at this larger than life and say, we get to do more than buy the NFT in someone else's metaverse, right? We get to build the metaverse. We get to create our own NFTs that go in, like there's more to it than what we see on the surface. And just because we're not the first at this table, right, because metaverses are out there already, doesn't mean there's no place for us. That's what making and creating our own table means. Yeah. And so I think we just have to start looking at ourselves as more than consumers.
Can I ask a question, Tawana?
Oh, sorry.
So Tawana, because what you're saying is interesting. So, the metaverse, there are multiple metaverses out there. If there is I recently did a business plan for a metaverse in the fashion district. People were going to, buy real estate in these different metaverses near the fashion districts. And there's prime real estate in these different metaverses now. Who's building Meta Harlem? Like old school Meta Harlem, who's building Meta Black Wall Street, Meta Tulsa, Oklahoma? You all are shaking your heads. I don't know if you've interviewed anybody who's talking about these things. I think that's a great idea.
Nope, I think we're shaking our heads because that's a great damn idea. Right.
Well, before somebody else builds it, like building the historical landmarks so that our children can know what happened in these old Black Wall Streets, as well as, the Harlem Renaissance and whatever that Meta Harlem Renaissance is. I'm just talking off the top of my head, but where are we going to congregate in the metaverse?
Yeah, that's a good. So Talisha, I know that if Talisha's still in here, I know that there is a Black company that is currently working on a metaverse, but I'd love for us to send them this idea so they can include our history within that metaverse. Yeah. And I know Talisha knows the name of the company because she posted an article recently.
It's being built
already. You said it's being built already. Okay.
Good. Perhaps we could have them come on and just talk to us about what they're doing.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I also just want to throw in there that in addition to being consumers and being producers on platform, in the real world, in your businesses, figure out what kind of supplier. Everybody's looking for supplier diversity right now. The thing that you're already building, even if you're a carpet guy, is of value, and they're looking for, certified minority business owners or women in business who are delivering carpet at the places where they're creating, all this tech stuff we're talking about. So no matter what you're already doing, get your certifications up and, contact supplier diversity offices at every company because they have money. You need the money. Come
Yeah.
get the money.
Yeah, Maurice is talking about Decentraland, and that was part of the project that I had to write the plan for. Decentraland is not a Black property, but it is like one of the most well-known metaverses out there. I will say one thing to everybody, especially my ladies out there, to be safe in the metaverse. There have been reports of sexual assault in the metaverse, so do your research about that. If you can't find anything, Talisha knows like how it happens and how you can, be safe and things like that. So just be very careful in the metaverse, but don't be afraid of it.
Right. Definitely don't be afraid of it, because it is the future. It is how wealth will be built and generated. Yes. Do not be afraid of it.
Yeah. Not only that, it will be how we work in the future as well, which is I wanted to bring up to Bryndan and Maurice and get your thoughts about this, because in the research I've been doing, first of all, people are going to more than ever work from home. And now with the robots being in the factories, you could have a guy working from home monitoring the robots in the factories, right? And McDonald's will be a kiosk, and the robots will be making the fries, and all of that. So I wanted you to talk about like the future of work as well. Also from a point of view of, and this popped in my head earlier today, like the fact that these companies, before you would have to be in the city, and they would have to recruit people from only in the city, but now they can go anywhere and recruit people and have global offices through the metaverse, and how that in a way could make some of us at a disadvantage if we are not skilled up. So have you been speaking to people about the future of work and what it's going to look like and the things we really need to be aware of as we're going into this next decade?
Just touching on it, and then I'm going to hand off to you, Maurice. All the stuff you talked about is absolutely happening. I've seen it. I've seen the cafe where the sensor is there so that you empty your basket and it recognizes, pattern recognition. That's an apple. It moves it to the scale, moves it into the bag. I've seen it. The early version of what we're talking about is the Apple Store. If you have your Apple Pay on your wallet, you go grab the product, you scan it yourself, and you walk out. It's already there. It's already happening. It's been happening for years now. And that tech is being tested and tried, and it's coming down and down the scale to lower and lower level establishments. You mentioned, McDonald's, and, the robot will make the fries. I've seen it. It exists. It's at CES. There's companies there that you just wait in line and you will get a meal that was made by the robots, and it's fine. However, I don't think it's something to be afraid of. Every machine breaks, which means every machine needs a technician to program it or to repair it or to set it up or break it down, right? These are skill sets. These are skills that everybody has the opportunity to learn. And so it harkens back to an earlier question about what should we be doing in terms of recession. It is, always focus on education, and it doesn't mean you have to go back to college, but it means that, you're now informed. We've had the conversation. We talked about the trends. These things are happening, verified. And I don't like looking at things in terms of how we can get left behind. I like talking about the surfing metaphor, which is we know the wave is coming. Start paddling now. There's still some time. Get out in front of it, and you will benefit, greater than not. So Mo, let me get out of the way on that one. What have you got?
Brief 20 to 30 years ago, which is how no brief comment starts. But 20 to 30 years ago, all of us in multicultural education were, kept telling folks like, hey, the future is a virtual learning place. You're going to be interacting with people from all over the planet, and you're going to need some semblance of cultural capital. You're gonna need to be able to interact with people who, whose identities are different from yours, and their cultural mores are different. And we said it, and we said it, and we said it. We're literally living it. Circling back for me and B, it's like, okay, it's a little like a Jedi Council meeting. When the Jedi Council is meeting, there's some holograms, there's some real people, and when it's done best, you can't tell who's who, right? You don't know who's there in person or not. Sith come through, they don't know who they're chopping up. But the fact that we can do like Decentraland, we can meet and are meeting and have avatar. We're doing these things now. We are literally interacting with people from around the country and from around the world. So it's happening right now. And so from my end, again, there's the robots, and there is the part that Bryndan's talking about with the maintenance that needs to happen. And then there's got to be some human beings at some point that interact, because without a historical context, without difference in the room or in the rooms as we go along, ultimately what ends up happening in this story that's told and in the narrative is, like you mentioned, we get to seat at the table, and then we get to be a part of the story. Because when you're not, what the ultimate narrative becomes. We know in the future, Black people just don't wash their hands. Circling back, right? Because if you assume that if there are no Black people in the room and your faucets only work for white people,
doesn't work for white, right? It doesn't work for them.
Then the narrative becomes
right,
because everyone from the outside says, "Oh, well, it don't work for Black because Black people don't wash their hands." They end up creating the narrative because you're not a part of the story, you're not a part of the narrative. The narrative gets written about you, and it's not going to be positive, especially when you've been erased. So that was my smart ass. Sorry, joke went over like a lead balloon. I tried.
I got it, Maurice.
Thank you.
What does that say about my sense of humor, though? But I got it.
I'm glad you explained it. I had to catch up. I'm glad you explained it to me. I'm like, what? Oh my God.
That was good.
So, do we have any more questions? I know we don't have any in social media.
Like there's one
here.
There's one here.
Go ahead, Tawana, you can read it.
Anonymous says, or it's just more a statement, they have fill stations of Starbucks and Trader Joe's in New York with no humans.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I heard a sentence earlier today that survival in the future is going to be based on who's most adaptable. And I think it's important for us to embrace that, especially I'm 46, Tawana's 22,
Tawana is a proud 53.
But we have another 15, 20 years in the workplace. I was thinking about myself, over the next, let's say 20 years, I'll be 67 at that time. That's so young. Right? And all of this technology is coming in. What are we going to do? I do believe that we're going to have to embrace being adaptable.
Yeah.
And being able to say, you know what? Because I've seen my mother do this, I'm not good at that tech stuff. I'm not good at that tech stuff. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to be good at it. There are a lot of resources out here that can teach me what I need to do or what I need to learn in order to not only survive in the future, but thrive as well. So I want to, have the two of you kind of give last words. Bryndan?
Yeah, there are many organizations, all the big ones that you are already consuming. And if you get out of the consumption side, go to their website instead of like the app, you'll see that there's a bunch of information on, let's say, Pinterest or on Google or on any of these other tech platforms where they're offering education and many times for free. They will offer you the ability to come in. I even saw a program with Google recently, I think it's expired now, where they were paying people to come take the certification because these companies are established and there's a bunch of smart people in there. And there are a bunch of smart versions of us in there as well. I've known guys who work for Google, Black folks work for Google for over a decade now who have risen up to high levels. And they're saying, listen, I want to make sure that we create an on-ramp for everybody to come in and be on the production side. That stuff exists. You won't see it if you're just on the consumption side of the app and you're just scrolling through Instagram, you're not going to see it, right? Yeah. You got to go to the website and say, what certifications are offered. And there's plenty. So I definitely want to encourage you, no matter what your career or education level is, these certifications aren't for people who have high degrees and, they're not just for those people. They're for anybody. to start at the beginner level and learn how to become a producer in any of these tech platforms, and or at least be able to charge more for your time. So I would say that's a big deal. And second, shameless plugs. I would love for you guys to experience our podcast, The Black Futurist. It's available. I would drive you towards Spotify. And here's why, because Spotify has done a great job of now allowing video on their app. So if you're driving in the car and you just want to listen to the audio, it'll play the audio. But if you press the screen and it goes from minimize to maximize, you'll actually see Maurice and I and our guests talking. And it's very light, not a lot of data. And he's a reasonable looking guy. So definitely come and watch him talk. He's smart and uses big words. It's good. Do that. Come on Spotify. Use it. Come see the app. I'd love to hear your feedback on some of the conversations we have. And we have these conversations in our community online. It's called Seven. So 7.community is the website. Spell it out, SEVEN.community, where we're sharing resources. When I find certifications that are free, I post them in there. When I find scholarships for parents who have kids in college like I do, I post them there. And you can create your own group where you can come on and learn. We have classes there. And it's a primarily Black community about education for Black folks and for having pretty smart discussions. So we'd love to have you on 7.community.
Yeah, and it's 7.community, everybody.
Yeah.
There we go.
What
We
you
put
got,
it in the chat. Wonderful. Thank you, T.
Thank you.
I would just say, and this is funny because now I'm giving maybe the opposite. I'm a capitalist and an entrepreneur, but at my heart, I'm a socialist, and I am also, I'm the type, like, if we need something, get the ski mask and the Kalashnikovs, right? Let's go take it. And so for me, on the other side of this is we need to be adamant about giving things and ensuring that the education itself is done, and as I say, in a guerrilla way, right? That 7.community is a place where we share game. We want to help each other's businesses, and at the same time, we want to help make sure everybody eats. And so I want to make sure that my kind of closing out a final statement is also to say, look, get paper and the entrepreneurial spirit is huge and important, but for me, in particular, for me as a Black man, it has to have a purpose greater than simply serving my wallet. And one of the ways that we can do that, I love it. One of the ways that we definitely can do that and engage in it is to radicalize the education side and to say that, I'm going to be adamant about, like, I'm giving the game away, whether it's my nephews, at a family gathering or a Slack chat, or, you hit me up on Twitter and you ask me something, I'm answering questions all the time. There's a difference between trying to dig into, where I need to charge you as a consultant, but just game and making sure that all of us eat and making sure that all of us have access to the resources, because I don't want Black folks that are entrepreneurs to recreate, instead of the Good Old Boys Network. Now, we got the Good Old Brothers and Sisters Network. That's not to recreate those things that come from white supremacy and capitalism is a mistake. So from that end, I hope and encourage that everybody gets involved and shares on that education side. So be comfortable being expensive, be comfortable charging for your expertise, and also be likewise comfortable mentoring and pulling somebody along to give them the game for free, for sure.
I love that.
Juana, final words from you, my dear.
I just want to say thank you to these brothers for coming and blessing us today. We're going to all follow, right? Because we know wisdom when we see it. And so we're going to definitely follow. I'm going to do it as soon as we disconnect so I don't forget and get busy. But this is great. This is great. Thank you guys for doing what you do. Thank you to the community for always coming out and hanging with us on Monday night as we continue to have these amazing conversations that get us one step closer to just getting better, right? For some of us, it'll mean generational wealth. For some of us, it'll mean getting out of debt, but it just means getting better for all of us. So thank you all for joining us over and over again.
All right, everybody. Tawana, the Bet on Black pitch.
Oh, yes. So I thought of something.
Yes.
So tomorrow's founder combines gaming with fitness. So he has a tech solution where he combines fitness and gaming. So, and he's a young man too. I kind of always when I feel like I always like clarify when it's a Black woman or when it's a young person. I don't know why I do that. I don't know if that's offensive or not, but I'm proud of them either way. But this is a young man, and he'll probably tell the story, but 18 months ago was living in his dad's basement and decided he wanted a different life for himself. Mm-hmm. And so now 18 months later, he has a different life. And so you're going to hear about that in addition to the project. But I mean, dude is like, he's got 18 months, got rental property, doing Airbnb. Like, brother, he made a decision. And when I tell you, he has done everything in these 18 months to get to that decision. I was so proud of him. I almost forgot we were talking about pitching the business because I was just like, I had a proud mom moment, like I was just so happy for him. But just an amazing story and a really cool project that he's developed. So excited to talk to him tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come hang out with me when we talk to this brother.
Okay. Also, somebody wrote anonymous, Apple has free classes for coding. Individuals who make promising apps, they pay you for your app. So look, there's a lot of free stuff out there. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I interviewed a woman from launchcode.org. They have a program where not only you can take coding classes, you can learn quality assurance and data science, all sorts of tech jobs for free. There are so many free resources that I'm getting close to the point where I want to put just together a gigantic list. And every time we get another resource that's free or low cost, just add it, because we have no excuses. So also tomorrow night, we have a gentleman, Demont, coming to talk about how to make six figures in the trades. So men and women can come, young and mature can come, 6 o'clock tomorrow. Again, this is a great entryway to getting into robot repair, which is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar business. So he has a class that he teaches through Lincoln Tech, and he's really trying to get Black men, especially young Black men, into these classes. So if you all, and that's open to the public, so tell a friend or two, to join us tomorrow night for that as well. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, Dee Vieira, I am going to create the list because we hear too much in here. So I'm going to create the list. So it may be behind the 10K paywall though. You may have to be a member to get access to it, but I'm going to work on that. So, all right, everybody, take care.
Bye. Have a good evening. Thank you, guys.